hope everybody's happy. It's going to be recorded. Okay, so yeah, it is being recorded. And let me share my screen with you, which hopefully is the introduction to create, deliver and support. So for the next hour, it would help to actually plug my laptop in. For the next hour, we'll be talking about the create, deliver and support training course. So it's one of the ITIL 4 specialist courses, and it's a 3-day course. But for the next hour, we're just going to cover really what the course covers, who it's applicable to. If you do attend a course, whether it's a self-paced e-learning course or a virtual course, or maybe sometime in the future a face-to-face course, what the course will actually cover. Okay, so let me just move on. Rules of the webinar: all microphones on mute. I think we've got about 30, 40, maybe even 50 people logged on. So if you could stay on mute. If you get connected, unfortunately, we can't resolve technical problems in next hour, so it'll just be a case of trying to sign back in again. It will be recorded, so if you miss something, you should be able to pick it up on the recording, which should be available within about 24 hours. If you've got any questions during the webinar, I know we've got Bob and Bob Amy's one of our tutors, one of our leading tutors, and Debbie, our sales manager, should also be looking at chat. So if you've got any questions during the webinar, feel free to chat, and hopefully they can answer your questions. If there's anything they can't answer or anything you want to ask me in particular, then we should have about 5-10 minutes at the end of the session for any Q&A. Or if something comes to you tomorrow, next week, week after, feel free to email me or email info@purplegriffon.com, and one of our account managers would pick that up and they can get through to me. Okay, so I'm quite approachable. Okay, let's move on. For those who don't know Purple Griffon, we've been around for about 18 years now. We've been working in the training market and consultancy market for about 18 years, primarily based on ITIL training and consultancy, but we've expanded the portfolio over the years, which now encompasses somewhere around about 300 courses, and we operate worldwide. So I've had the joy of traveling around Europe, bits of Asia, even Australia at one stage, and we are one of the leading ITIL training providers. About me, there's me, trainer consultant, been working in IT for over 40 years now, been working in and with ITIL since version 1 for the last 30 years. As well as ITIL, I train and consult in VeriSM or Verism, wherever you want to call it, DevOps, ITAM, SIAM, and more recently, artificial intelligence. Okay, so CDS, or Create, Deliver and Support. This was one of the first specialist courses released after ITIL Foundation by Lawless. What we want to cover really in the next hour is give you an introduction to Create, Deliver and Support, an introduction to the course, try to explain why you should attend the course, what the benefits are of it, how it differs from other courses or version 3 courses, and what's the same. So when Lawless decided to create ITIL 4, it wasn't a case of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. They wanted to build on top of ITIL version 3. So a lot of the things we see in ITIL 4 were there in version 3. The emphasis really is more about not what to do, how to do it. So looking at techniques, approaches, various new concepts and some old concepts as well, which have been drawn together over the years, which are now a part of ITIL 4. Okay. So this is the qualification scheme. And to be considering the create, deliver and support module, one of the prerequisites is ITIL Foundation. So everything you've learned at ITIL Foundation, you can bring into CDS. CDS is just one of 5 modules. Although you see 6 DPIs there twice, it's in both work streams, in the managing professional and the strategic leader. Create, deliver and support is the one we're going to focus on, but just a little touch on the others. Drive stakeholder value. This is focusing on relationship management. It's the customer journey. It's the touch points between a service provider and a service consumer. The high velocity IT, this is ITIL on steroids. This is about agile, lean, DevOps concepts and how we do service management in that environment. Direct, plan and improve is, well, as it describes, it's about setting direction. So it's about good governance, it's about planning, not just project planning, any form of planning, and improvement. So the continual improvement method we'd apply, which is applicable across everything we do. And lastly, the digital and IT strategy. This is the latest one. I think the first exams are probably in October, November time. We've had the final release of the development materials and we're busy working on developing this course at the moment. It's slightly different to the others in that it's not just a 40-question multiple choice exam. It's a 30-question exam, but there are assignments. So there are in-course assignments you need as well. And prerequisite for the ITIL leader for the digital and IT strategy, or DITS as we know it, is that you should really have 3 years management experience. And for those of you who are ITIL experts or have got 17 credits from the version 3 scheme, you can take the managing professional transition course, which is a 5-day course, and this will transition you to managing professional. Again, we still don't know how to get to ITIL master, whether you'll just get that once you're a managing professional and a strategic leader, or whether there's some other activities, whether it's training or whether it's some sort of project you need to implement to get to that level. As yet, we don't know. And it's a question I'll be asking Axelos in probably next week. But when I asked them a couple of weeks ago, there was still no answer. Right, so CDS exam format, 90-minute closed book, it's 40 questions. If you qualify, you can qualify, which is if your first language isn't English, you can qualify for an extra 25% of time to take the exam. The pass mark is 28 out of 40 compared to 26 out of 40, so it's 70% you need to get. The exams run administered by PeopleCert, and whether you're taking a paper-based exam, and we're not doing too many of them recently, a lot of them are online proctored exams, you need to make sure you've got a photo ID, and if you take an online exam, make sure you're aware of the PeopleCert rules before you attempt the exam. And also speak to you, if you're taking the exam on Works PC or laptop, check with the techies that it is capable of downloading and running the exam software. Exam questions for the CDS course are based on Bloom's level 2 and 3. Foundation is 1 and 2. So Bloom's level 1, you remember, and level 2, you understand. This includes now probably 2/3 of the questions are aimed at level 3. This is you can apply the knowledge that you've acquired. So a small scenario, which might be 1 sentence, and then a question about that scenario. Okay, so this is where CDS sits. These are the elements of the value chain. And what we're looking at for the CDS course is the 3 central elements. So obtain and build, design and transition, deliver and support. And these roughly map onto, in version 3, what we would consider to be service design, service transition, service operation. But there is some elements of planning, there's some elements of improvements as well. So it's not a direct map onto the three ITIL version 3 courses. Okay, so we look at the value chain and the 6 elements. The way I remember the 6 elements is PIEDOD, P-I-E-D-O-D, so plan, improve, engage, D for design, O for obtain, and D for delivery. Just the way I remember it, might be easy, just remember the elements. Okay, so in CDS, we actually drill down in the chain and we look at 2 value streams. And we look at the relevant practices and the processes within those practices as well. So who's the course aimed at? It's really aimed at anyone working in that area. So working in any area of design, transition, operation and support. And it's also applicable to management who are responsible for the end-to-end delivery of IT services and digital services. Okay, so it's got a wide remit in terms of its applicability. Axelos consider the CDS course to be really the engine room of digital and the IT function. Basically, this is the area where we get things done. So we design, we transition, we test, we build, we support, we deploy, we support the IT services. So this is really at the heart, I think, CDS. I probably should have said the various modules, there's no set sequence to take them. With version 3, some people like to take strategy, design, transition, operation, and then CSI. But again, there was no reason that they should do things in that sequence. And again, these courses are all standalone, so there's no reason why you should do CDS before DPR. Okay, you can do them in any order, they do stand alone. Okay, so the CDS course, what's going to actually tell you what's going to cover. It's going to cover 2 models value streams. First one is about how we create a new service, and the second model is how we support a service. So a lot of the course is going into detail around those 2 model value streams. We'll also look at different types of organizational structure, which we'll touch on a little bit later. We'll look at various techniques. So we say there's 5 techniques about managing demand. We'll look at 10 different steps to become customer orientated. We'll look at 10 techniques to prioritize work. And we'll also look at 12 ITIL practice guides. So the practice guides cover really the people, the process and the technology around various areas. There are 34 practices. Many of them are actually used across the 2 models, but we'll just focus on 6 within the training course. So 6 for the implementing a new service and 6 for supporting an existing service. Okay, so the skills you'll gain from attending a CDS course are really about being able to improve your existing processes to make them more applicable and relevant today. It's not usual to go into an organization to do an audit or something and see a process which you know hasn't been touched for 5 or 6 years. Okay, processes need to be checked at least on an annual basis, whether they're fit for purpose and fit for use. It'll also give you the skills and knowledge to be able to optimize existing value streams where we've documented them, and look at existing workflows, optimize those workflows, and maybe automate elements of those workflows. The course will also give you the skills and knowledge to develop services to meet demand, because if we look at the value chain, either side of it, and the service value system itself, we've got demand on one side and value on the other. So it's about how we meet demand and deliver value. The course will also look at new technologies. So we'll look at things like artificial intelligence, machine learning. It'll look at continual integration, continual deployment. May not be new technologies to you, but they are to ITIL. So we're looking at how organizations can integrate these new technologies and exploit them for service management benefit. Okay, so here we have the service value system. The CDS course really focuses on that middle bit, the service value chain and two value streams. But we can't forget that surrounded by these other best practice guidance techniques, approaches. So our guiding principles, although you would have covered those, our 7 guiding principles, you would have already covered those in ITIL Foundation. They're still applicable in CDS in all of the activities we carry out. Governance is still there. So setting direction for what we do and controls. The practices obviously are there, they'll be used across the value chain, and continual improvement, as well as being a practice, it is applicable across the value chain and across the value stream. Okay, so there we have it, the 6 elements, and we'll look when we look at the value stream models how we get from one side to the other. How we get from demand to value for new service and also for supporting an existing service. And another thing which is in the background really, we do talk about it on CDS course, and it's the 4 dimensions of service management, which roughly map onto the 4 P's of service design in ITIL version 3. Okay, so these are sort of background considerations in terms of organisation and people. So what organisational structure do we need? How many people? What capabilities? What skills? Where should they be deployed? Also the information and technology, our partners and suppliers, and our value streams themselves and processes. So we need to consider these when we're carrying out any activities. And obviously we've got our other factors as well, which we look at and need to consider in terms of PESTL, so political, economic, social, technological, legal and environmental factors. These all come into play when we're designing new process flows, or we're designing value streams, or documenting them, or trying to optimize them or improve them. Okay, so they are background considerations which should be in the back of our minds alongside those seven guiding principles. Okay, so learning objectives of the CDS course. Basically, can we understand how to plan and build a service value stream to create, deliver and support services? Okay, there's probably multiple value streams there. We will look at 2 within the CDS course. We also need to know how we can use our ITIL practices to contribute to the creation and delivery and support of the activities across the service value system and the value streams. And we also need to know how to create, deliver and support the services themselves. So we're looking at Bloom's level 1, 2, 3, questions in the exam pitched at level 2 and level 3. So do we understand and can we apply? Do we know how to apply what we know? Okay, and just a reminder of the 7 guiding principles. We don't keep dragging them out for every single approach or technique we look at, but they should be there, as I say, in the background. So when we talk about collaboration, boom, there's that guiding principle of collaborate and promote visibility. Okay, so when we're carrying out any activity, we should consider, is the value, how do we deliver value to our stakeholders, to our consumers of this service? And things like optimize and automate, hopefully optimize before you automate, not the other way around. So how can we make a process or an activity or a workflow leaner before we automate it? Is it possible to automate it? Does it make sense to automate it? So again, the considerations. Okay, so the syllabus says we need to understand how to plan and build a service value stream to create, deliver and support services. Okay, so there's more than one value stream. How many value streams should there be? Well, that depends on you, on your organization. Do you want to try and map a value stream onto an existing process? Possibly you could do that. Does it make sense to do it? Again, it depends on your organization. What we're not looking to do is to develop hundreds and hundreds of value streams. It's sufficient value streams to actually allow us to manage value across the value chain. So we're looking about, the course covers things like basic concepts and challenges across the service value system. It's looking at things like a shift left approach, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. It's also about how we plan and manage the resources within the service value scheme system. I keep calling it a scheme, it's a system. And also how we use information and technology across the SVS. Okay, so they're the key learning objectives. Okay, so let's break that down a little bit more. So understanding the basic concepts and challenges across the SVS. So those challenges may be around organizational structure. And as I said before, the course covers 4 organizational structures. So it'll look at divisional structure. It will look at flat structures, hybrid structures, and I've missed one out, and I'm just thinking which one I've missed out. So my apologies.
David,
Shout it out, Bob.
Matrix.
Say again, Bob.
Matrix structure.
Matrix. Right. Apologies, I had a senior moment there. The matrix. Right. Okay. So we'll look at the different organizational structures. The course looks at things like integrated and collaborative teams. So what's the difference between cooperation and collaboration? How can we get people to collaborate better? How do we organize for better collaboration? What drives collaboration? What challenges are there to collaboration? We'll also look at things like team capabilities, roles, competencies, skills, experience, knowledge. Also look at things like team culture and the different types of culture we could have in an organization, depending on the size of the organization and the age of the organization, and the people who are there. So it's about sort of attitudes, behavior, which really drives the culture in the organization. And we can get to discuss things like what is a good culture. We also look at things like customer orientated mindset. So how do we develop that within the organization? And also employee satisfaction. How do we manage that within our employees? Because if we've got dissatisfied employees, then the chances are we're going to have dissatisfied customers as well. And then look at communication. So how we drive and how we manage positive communication and what the value is of positive communication. Another element of the syllabus is how to plan and manage resources within the SVS. And those resources may be people, it could be information, could be data, could be finance. So resources come in different shapes and forms, and how we can actually use those resources to achieve the outputs we want to achieve in terms of delivering activities, but also how our service consumers can achieve the outcomes that they want to achieve. So how do we manage the resources? So it depends on the organizational structure. It depends on the size of the organization. So a chunk of the course is devoted to looking at how we manage and plan the resources across the SVS. Information and technology, another area we look at. So we cover everything from data analytics, data security. So the example on the screen there is how the various steps in terms of data engineering, data science. So that things like visualization of the data, okay, how we ingest the data, where we acquire the data from. So it's looking at how information and data is managed within an organization for the benefit of our service consumers, in terms of them being able to achieve the outcomes they want to achieve. So we spend a big chunk of time looking at information and technology. And if you remember, that's one of our 4 dimensions of service management. Another area we look at is how we design the value streams. So the course doesn't actually cover value stream management as such in terms of how you should do it, although we do have a little mini course available. So value stream management. The CDS course looks at 2 model value streams. So developing and transitioning a new service, and also how we provide user support. Okay, so let's have a look at the first one of those. How we use a value stream to design, develop and transition new services. Okay, so we've got this yellow wiggly line going across our value chain. So goes from demand. First step is engagement. So this is really engaging with our consumers, engaging with the market maybe, engaging with anyone who can provide information in terms of understanding the service requirements. So it's about what activities are engaged there. So business analysis type activities. So moving on from that, step 2 is in planning. And this is where we decide whether to invest in the new service. In this value stream, we've decided we are going to invest in the new service. If the decision at step 2 was not to invest in a new service, then we'd be going back to engage, to explain to the customer or the consumer that we wouldn't be investing it, or we couldn't invest for whatever reason. So this value stream example assumes we have decided to invest in it, so we move to step 3, where we design and architect a new service, obviously meeting the consumer's requirements. Once that step's complete, we move to step 4. So we build, configure, or we buy the various service components. Once we've done step 4, moving back up to design and transition. Again, step 5, we're now going to deploy those service components. And once they're deployed, we now hand over to delivery and support, and this is where the services are now released to the customers and users as products and services. And hopefully we get some value out of this. And that there should really be some feedback loop in terms of value back to demand, but also value in terms of maybe customer satisfaction back to improvement activities. So we could jump from value back to engage and maybe through to improvement. So this model is fairly simple. So we would, during the CDS course, we would walk through this and explain the various steps and activities that we undertake. Okay, and look at the underpinning practices. I said we need to bear the 7 guiding principles in mind. Probably the 2 that we need to look at here is 1, focus on value. How does this new service deliver value to the consumer? And also thinking and working holistically. So rather than have sort of separate steps and bottlenecks between one step and the next, how can we get this working seamlessly across the value chain? Okay, so these are the various practices which could take part in this value stream. So rather than run a 5-day CDS course, if we looked at each one of these practices, we've cut it down to, well, I say we, Axelos in terms of the core syllabus have cut it down to 6 core practices. So service design, software development and management, deployment management, release management, validation and testing, and change enablement. So we would look at those practices and see how those practices underpin the various steps within that value stream. And each practice may contribute to one or more steps. Okay, it's not one practice per step necessarily. In some cases it is, but in not all cases. Okay, if we had knowledge management in there, then knowledge management would be applicable across all of those steps. So that's the first model. The second model is how we would create a value stream to provide user support. So this could be seen as an incident management value stream, or we could call it a support stream. It depends again on you and your organization in terms of how many value streams you're going to create and the complexity of the value streams. Don't make them over complex. If one's going to get really complex, does it make sense to split it into 2 value streams? This one's a little bit more complex. So we'll just jump to the steps on the next slide. Okay, so this is taking us from demand to value. So let's say someone's rung the service desk. So there's a point of engagement there between the user and the service desk. So we're going to acknowledge and register the query at this stage, or we'll log a ticket. Step 2, we've moved to delivery and support. Again, could be service desk. It might be second or third line support, maybe even third party. Okay, so the query is investigated and we've classified it as an incident, and we're going to attempt to fix that incident. We think we've got the skills, the knowledge, the technology to fix it. It could be that we then transfer the incident to a specialist team who's got the knowledge and skills to actually apply a fix, a bug fix maybe, or a technology fix. So we're in the obtain build area. Okay, so we've obtained a fix. We now need to deploy that fix. So we've got to go into design and transition. So we may be here looking at change enablement. So we need to raise change to get this or release to get this fix deployed. So that's step 4. Step 5, after deploying the fix, we need to verify that the actual incident's been resolved. So that's on step 5. Step 6, assuming we've got a fix, we're then looking for maybe some feedback from the end user, which is then going to go back to engagement, to engage with them. And then step 7, apply some improvements, or at least raise a change record in our improvement register. Okay, you may notice the dots going from 2 to 3. So we've got sort of a split, and this could be because it's a known error and there is a known fix for it, or it could mean that we have to actually develop a new fix. So we can have these branches within the value streams. It's not just a single pass through on a value stream. We could have these branches at various decision points, okay, within the value stream. Okay, so which Sorry, jumped ahead of myself slightly. In terms of, we talk about delivering value. So in this case, we're delivering value for the user. So how do we deliver that value? Was a resolved incident within required timescales to meet the user's needs. They're now back working as normal. In terms of the other stakeholders, so customers, the people who actually pay for the service, we may provide value to them in terms of reporting, in terms of providing guidance, in terms of quick fixes, circumventions, workarounds that they can advise their users of, or user guides. So we can do other activities within this value stream, or maybe develop additional value streams. In terms of the value to support teams, suppliers and partners, maybe around developing a knowledge base of known errors. Relationship managers, probably communication, especially if an incident has been escalated, so the relationship managers don't get customers screaming at them for something they're totally unaware of. So we build something into the value stream in terms of within a process, within the RACI matrix, for those of you who understand RACI, of informing the relationship manager that a priority 1 or priority 2 incident has occurred. And also in terms of collecting data for service level managers to feed into service level reports. And for senior management, it may be by providing a dashboard so senior management can see the performance of a particular service and how many incidents have occurred against that service over a day or a week. So, or maybe some real-time information. So there's various stages and activities we can undertake to provide value to not just the users, but to other stakeholders. And there may well be other stakeholders within your organisation, maybe in terms of board of directors, shareholders, government, unions. So again, it depends on your organisation. Okay, other considerations for user support maybe, which may define the type of value streams or the number of value streams you have, is in terms of how is support provided. Is it provided by centralised or local service desks? Are they offshored? Is it physical service desk? Do you work in a DevOps environment where it's a case if you break it, you fix it? So do we use some sort of swarming around incidents? And we'll touch on swarming a little bit later. In terms of our service desk, is it a log and what we used to call a log and flog, or log and pass on to second line support? Or if we got a highly technical service desk where we have a high rate of first level resolution, so a high fix rate. Also, do you have second or third level support? Are these outsourced? How are they managed? Also, things like hours of support. So what happens if an incident occurs out of hours, for weekend, bank holiday? Also, how do you trigger work to be picked up by various teams? Do you have an integrated service management tool set which automates that? Or is it some sort of collaborative working tool that you use? And also, how many vendors are we using? So what's our sourcing model? Do we have a SIAM type model in place? So that there's lots of considerations when we're looking at designing and develop a value stream for user support. And just to touch on the underpinning practices within this value stream, again, quite a few of them would take a while to go through all. So in the CDS course, we just focus on these 6. Okay, well, which are the ones that you would expect to be there. So monitoring and event management to auto detect events and incidents. Obviously, service desk, incident problem, knowledge management, service level management. So within the CDS course, we would look at these practices and identify how they underpin the various steps within a support value stream. Okay, so they're the two model value streams that we'd look at. We also need to look at to understand how we actually create, deliver and support the services. So within the syllabus, it suggests that we should look at things like how we manage queues and backlogs. And that there's various techniques we can look at, which we do within the course. And also some of the challenges. So we may fix a backlog at one stage in a value stream, only to identify that because we've fixed what was a blocker at one step may result then in an overload of work further downstream. And we can look at things like prioritizing our workload. So how do we prioritize? Is it prioritized on first in, first out, or is it last in, first out, or do we have some sort of algorithm that we use to prioritize work based on business impact, business urgency, maybe based on technical severity? So we could look at the various ways of prioritizing workload. So I've talked about swarming, and swarming really is looking at how we can pull a number of specialist resources together to identify who's going to actually carry out the work, and then how to move on to other. Then the people who are freed up can then move on to work on other work items. It's not a new method. It's something that's been done for many years. And as a problem manager, I frequently used to do this, pull a number of technical people together, especially when everyone denied any involvement in causing a problem. Typically, it was networks and server support who would both blame each other. So we'd get together, a number of techies together, identify where we were going to start the investigation, who was going to carry out those activities, and freeing up everybody else to carry on with other work. Okay, so it was just pulling people together until we'd made the decision. And we could do this multiple times as necessary. So it's about understanding what the technique is. Another technique which we look at in CDS is this shift left approach, which is where we're trying to move the work to the optimum team or the optimum person to actually drive better value for the customer in terms of improving lead times, resolution times, improving satisfaction and efficiency. In a very simple example, it could be service desk isn't allowed to investigate a particular type of incident, has to move to second line support, but with a little bit of education and training, service desk would be probably the best place to actually carry out this activity. So we would have a shift left approach to move the activities to the left. Okay, and it's not just in support. This could be in software development type activities, which is really where it originally came from. So we would look at various examples around shift left, okay, within the CDS course. Other areas of, that the course would cover would be things like, do we buy or build a solution? Do we buy an off-the-shelf package? Do we build it ourselves? Okay, so how are those decisions made? Who makes those decisions? When are they made? And what activities would actually underpin buying a solution or building a solution? So we look at the various considerations. We also look at things like the sourcing options for various services. Do we develop in-house? Do we outsource a part of a service or a complete service or some activity within the service value system? And the last sort of activity we look at is service integration and management. Some of you may know the term SIAM. So this is basically SIAM, although Axelos aren't allowed to call it SIAM because that's trademarked. So within the course, we call it service integration and management. So we would look at the different types of approaches to service integration and management in terms of internal integrator, external, some sort of hybrid, or lead supplier as the integrator, and how you would structure the organization to have a service integration and management approach, and what the benefits and the challenges are of establishing that. So in summary, I think roughly on time, in summary, what does CDS actually cover? It covers the two example models of work streams. So how we establish, how we design, build, test, deploy a new service, and how do we provide user support. So looking at those two models, we need to consider the 7 guiding principles throughout create, deliver, and support. We look at various techniques and approaches like swarming, shift left, and we look at 12 practices. So 6 for the new service and 6 for the user support work stream. We go into details on those 12 practices. And talking of practices, for anyone who's passed or taken and passed the ITIL Foundation exam, which is obviously a prerequisite for CDS, you will have access to My ITIL. If you haven't been given access to My ITIL after passing the Foundation exam, you need to contact Axelos and demand access to My ITIL. And you get 12 months free access. After that, I believe it's £50 a year to maintain access. And there's over 1,000 pages of information for the 12 practices. So if you've gained access to the practice information, you'll see it's based loosely on the 4 dimensions, and they're very well written by experts and practitioners within those areas. Right, so that covers CDS, what's covered in the course, and hopefully you found it interesting and you may want to book on the course. And I'm sure if you contact one of our account managers, either via phone or via our website or via our email at info@purplegriffon.com, they'll be able to give you a quotation for either some virtual learning or some self-paced e-learning, or maybe some face-to-face training sometime in the future. Okay, so let's see what you picked up from that. So it's just a sample question. Bloom's level 3. So we're looking at how we can apply some information. So the scenario is 2 IT teams are not collaborating well. Which of these will most help to improve the situation? Okay, so is it A, getting teams to agree to share information? Maybe, maybe not. Is it about aligning KPIs for the teams? Probably not. Will it get them to collaborate better? Probably not. How about establishing a shared goal for the teams? Whether they'll have to collaborate around that shared goal. Maybe it's C. Let's have a look at D. How about merging the teams into a single larger team? Ooh, that's taking rather large sledgehammer to open a very small nut. So hopefully you've gone for C. Let me just check C is the answer. Yeah, establishing a shared goal for the teams. So the questions are around that sort of level. So 2/3 of them will be how do you apply, and 1/3 of the questions will be do you understand this concept? So do you understand it sufficiently to be able to answer a question around it? Okay, so that takes us to about the 50-minute mark for the webinar, and that takes us to the end of it. So hopefully I've sort of been glancing to the side at the chat window every now and then, and hopefully Bob and Debbie have answered all of your questions. I'll just have a quick look through. Are there any? Say again, please, Bob.
We have so far, yeah.
You have so far.
Yeah.
Right. If there are any further questions in the next few minutes, if you throw them into chat, we'd be more than happy to answer them. Please don't everyone unmute your mics, otherwise we'll have about 40-50 people all trying to talk at once. So I'm going to assume that everyone is either logged off or has no further questions. But as I said, we'd be quite happy to answer any questions after this session. So please feel free and contact us. There is another session scheduled tomorrow for managing professional transition. So this is for people who are ITIL V3 experts, or people who are working up to 17 credits using the V3 training courses, who decide then maybe to, instead of taking MALC to become an ITIL expert, maybe decide to take those 17 credits and move across to the managing professional using the transition route, which is that 5-day course, which I'll be talking about tomorrow. Okay, well, I've just spotted a question coming up in the chat. I did ITIL V3. Would I be able to take this test?
Steve, I'm just answering that now.
You're right. Okay. You're one step ahead of me, Bob. Right. Okay. So if that covers everything, and we can stay online a little bit longer. I'm sure Bob will be happy to answer any chat. Or if the session closes and you still have further questions, then feel free to email me, Bob, or info, or the account managers if you know them personally, to get some pricing. I'm sure they'll do you a deal. Okay. So I'll say thank you for listening, and I hope this has been of some use, and any feedback would be useful. Okay, thank you and goodbye.